I told you I'd come for what's mine.
10 million is more than enough. Disappear.
Not enough to forget what you did.
The knock came at 6:14 in the morning. The kind of knock that didn't ask permission. 3 clean hits, not loud, not rushed. The sound of someone who already owned the room on the other side of the door. Daniel Reyes had been awake for 20 minutes, packing his daughter's lunch at the kitchen counter of a 1-bedroom apartment that always smelled a little like detergent and burnt toast. His 10-year-old, Lucy, sat at the table in mismatched socks, drawing stars on a napkin while her cereal went soggy. Outside, the hallway hummed with old pipes and somebody's TV bleeding through the walls. When Daniel opened the door, the entire hallway seemed to shrink. 2 men in dark suits stood there with the stillness of gravestones. Between them was a woman the whole country would have recognized even in the dark. Evelyn Voss, founder and CEO of Voss Biotech. The woman magazine covers called Untouchable, Brilliant, Self-Made, the queen of modern medicine. She wore a cream coat that probably cost more than Daniel's car, and in her gloved hand was a leather folder so slim it looked harmless. "Mr. Reyes," she said softly, "may I come in?" Daniel looked past her like he was checking whether reality had parked downstairs. "You're in the wrong building." "No," Evelyn said. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Lucy had turned around in her chair now, spoon frozen halfway to her mouth. She knew that face. Everybody knew that face. It was on hospital wings and charity galas and giant digital billboards that promised a kinder future. Daniel stepped into the doorway just enough to block her view of the kitchen. "My daughter's inside." "I know," Evelyn said. There was something in the way she said it that made his fingers tighten around the door. 5 minutes later, she was sitting at the tiny kitchen table where Lucy usually did homework, while one of the men waited outside and the other remained in the hall. Lucy had been sent to the bedroom with her backpack and strict instructions to finish tying her shoes. She obeyed, but Daniel knew she was listening through the cracked door. Evelyn opened the folder and slid a single sheet toward him. No dramatic pile of paperwork, just 1 page. $10 million. Wire transfer instructions already prepared. Relocation package, new identities available. International Education Trust. Immediate execution. Daniel stared at the number for a very long time. It looked fake, like something printed in a movie prop department. It looked like rent paid forever, braces paid off, Lucy's future bought in cash and silence. Then Evelyn said, "Take your daughter and disappear. Today." He looked up slowly. "You came here yourself to say that?" "I didn't trust anyone else with the conversation." "Why?" Her eyes didn't move. "Because you know something you shouldn't." Daniel let out one dry laugh, not amused, more like exhausted. "That's a hell of a way to start a morning." 10 million, Mr. Reyes. No court, no press, no danger. You walk away, and Lucy gets the kind of life you could never give her." The room changed after that sentence. It wasn't just insulting. It was surgical. Daniel leaned back in his chair and studied her like he was finally seeing the outline of the person behind the polished face. "You really practiced that one, didn't you?" Evelyn's jaw shifted almost invisibly. He tapped the paper once. "You think this is about money?" "I think this is about survival." "No," Daniel said quietly. "This is about your secret." For the first time, something cracked in her expression. Not guilt, not fear exactly. Something sharper. Recognition. Daniel reached into the kitchen drawer beneath the dish towels and pulled out a small silver bracelet, old and tarnished, with a tiny moon charm hanging crooked from the clasp. He set it on the table between them. Evelyn stopped breathing. "I saw this on your wrist in an interview 3 years ago," Daniel said. "Then I found the matching half in my wife's jewelry box after she died." Now her face had gone pale enough to see what makeup normally buried. She looked at the bracelet as if it had crawled out of a grave. "My wife kept the other half," Daniel said. "She left me a letter and a flash drive. So let me save us both time, Ms. Voss. I know Lucy is your daughter." In the bedroom, something dropped. Probably Lucy's shoe. Neither of them looked away. For a second, the apartment was so quiet Daniel could hear the old refrigerator kick on. Then Evelyn whispered, "She doesn't know?" "Of course she doesn't know." His voice hardened. "Why would she? So she could spend her childhood wondering why the richest woman in America let the world think she was dead?" Evelyn looked toward the bedroom door now, and there it was. That tiny, involuntary movement. The first human crack in the armor. Daniel hated himself for noticing it, because some weak part of him wanted to believe it meant something. But then she said, "If the truth comes out, your daughter's life will be destroyed." "No," Daniel said. "Her life gets destroyed if I teach her she can be bought." Evelyn folded her gloves into perfect halves. "You think this is about protecting me. It isn't. It's about protecting her from what happens when people learn who she is. Media, lawsuits, men from my board who don't mind cleaning problems with uglier methods than I do." Daniel's eyes darkened. Like what happened to Marisol? That name hit harder than the bracelet. His wife. Marisol Reyes had worked night shifts as a nurse at St. Catherine Women's Center. She came home carrying other people's tragedies in her shoulders, in her shoes, in the little silences between her sentences. She and Daniel had spent 4 years trying to have a baby before doctors stopped using hopeful language. Then one November night, 14 years ago, she walked through their front door with a newborn wrapped in a hospital blanket and terror all over her face. Daniel had thought someone died. Instead, Marisol locked every bolt in the apartment, sat at the edge of the bed, still wearing scrubs stained with someone else's blood, and said, "If I tell you what I'm about to tell you, we can never unknow it." The baby was sleeping in her arms, tiny, warm, alive. Marisol told him a young woman had come into a private wing under a false name, surrounded by men with expensive watches and dead eyes. The birth had been secret. The paperwork had been prepared before labor even started. Stillbirth certificate, cremation authorization. Everything ready except one impossible detail. The baby was born breathing. The family's lawyers wanted the records buried. The doctor in charge wanted a bonus large enough to erase his conscience. And the young mother, terrified, drugged, surrounded, had whispered through tears, "Please let me see her." Only once before her father ordered security to remove the child. Marisol had said she could still hear that cry in her sleep. The baby was never supposed to exist publicly. By dawn, she would have been transferred through channels meant for problems wealthy people preferred not to name. But Marisol had looked at that child and done the one reckless, life-altering thing good people do when the world gives them a choice between legal and right. She refused to let her disappear. Daniel remembered sitting on the bed, staring at the baby's tiny fist emerging from the blanket. "What are we talking about here, Mary?" "I'm talking about a child whose first story is already a lie. We can't just keep a baby." "I know. We can go to the police." She laughed then, a broken, hollow laugh. "Against who? Men who can make records vanish before sunrise? What do you want from me?" Marisol looked at him with tears she was too stubborn to let fall. "I want to know if I'm crazy for thinking maybe God put her in my hands because somebody had to choose her." Daniel had looked at the child again. Then the child opened her eyes. That was the end of the argument. They named her Lucy because Marisol said she looked like morning. For 6 years, they lived inside a fragile miracle. Adoption was arranged through sealed emergency channels with the help of one honest family court judge who owed Marisol a favor and asked no questions he didn't want answered. Daniel fixed elevator motors by day and drove deliveries at night. Marisol worked overtime. They were tired all the time. Happy in that ragged, breathless way poor families sometimes are when love does the heavy lifting money can't. Then, Marisol died on a rainy Tuesday. A truck ran a red light and crushed the driver's side of her car 2 blocks from the hospital. That was the official story. Accident, tragedy, weather. Daniel almost believed it, until 3 months later when he found a hidden flash drive taped beneath the bottom drawer of her jewelry box, along with a note in her handwriting. "If you're reading this, it means they didn't stop at warning me." There were files on the drive. Birth records, payment logs, emails routed through shell corporations, DNA results. Marisol had ordered in secret years later after she saw Evelyn Voss on television receiving an award for her maternal health foundation, a foundation reportedly inspired by a devastating pregnancy loss that taught her compassion. Marisol had recognized the eyes, same eyes as Lucy. And one audio recording that Daniel still couldn't listen to without feeling something inside him tear. Marisol's voice, shaking but clear. "If anything happens to me, it was not an accident. Evelyn Voss knows the child lived. Her people came to see me last week. They offered money first. Then they offered fear. I told them I would not hand over my daughter. If I disappear, tell Lucy every day that she was chosen twice. Once by the woman who gave birth to her, and once by the woman who refused to let the world bury her." Daniel spent the next year doing what grief does best, keeping a man alive while slowly turning him into someone harder. He kept working, packed lunches, paid bills late, sat through school recitals with an empty seat beside him. He learned how to braid hair badly. He learned that a child can sense sadness the way dogs sense storms. Lucy stopped asking when Mama was coming home and started asking if heaven had birthdays. At night, when she slept, Daniel began pulling at threads. A retired clerk from St. Catherine, a private investigator who took half his fee in cash and the other half in pity. Old board minutes, sealed case numbers, a trail of hush money winding through shell companies that all led eventually to one untouchable woman. He never went to the press. Not yet. He knew what happened to little people who brought knives to gunfights. He gathered, waited, learned. And somewhere along the line, Evelyn Voss learned he knew. Now she sat in his kitchen, offering $10 million to erase him. Daniel slid the paper back across the table. "You had my wife killed." Evelyn's eyes flashed. "I did not order her death." "But you sent men to threaten her." She held his gaze. "Yes." "Why?" "Because by then the board knew there had been a child. They wanted the risk contained." "You mean buried?" "I mean alive," she said sharply. You don't understand the people around me. Daniel leaned forward. Then help me, because from where I'm sitting, I understand them just fine. For the first time, Evelyn's composure bent under something like anger. You think power feels like freedom? It doesn't. Not when men twice your age spent your entire youth teaching you what could be taken if you embarrassed the family. Not when the company you built sits on the approval of vultures who would devour your daughter to protect stock prices. Not when one mistake at 22 becomes a secret that can collapse a billion-dollar structure onto thousands of innocent employees. Daniel stared at her. And there it is. What? The part where rich people always turn their cowardice into strategy. That landed hard. In the bedroom, the floor creaked. Daniel stood. You need to leave. Evelyn rose too, but slower. She reached into her coat pocket and placed a small object beside the bracelet. A photograph, worn at the corners from being handled too much for something supposedly forgotten. A younger Evelyn, maybe 22, in a hospital gown. Pale, tear-streaked, holding a newborn for less than a second before the picture cut off at the edge, as if someone had tried to destroy it. I didn't know they took her alive, she said, voice low now. My father told me she was gone. Years later, I learned a nurse interfered and the records were altered. By then there were too many people involved, too much risk. I looked for her quietly. I found whispers, nothing more. Then your wife contacted one of my attorneys 9 months before she died. She wanted immunity, protection, a written admission. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. She never told me that. She was trying to secure Lucy before coming to you. Evelyn swallowed. I told the board I would handle it. I sent men to warn her off while I prepared a private agreement. I was too slow. Someone else moved first. Daniel thought of rainy pavement, twisted metal. Lucy in a black dress holding his hand at the funeral, like she was the one trying to keep him upright. So now what? He asked. You buy the child back? Her eyes snapped up. No. Then what is this? Evelyn looked toward Lucy's door again. This is me trying, too late, to keep her from becoming a headline. Daniel almost laughed, except grief was pressing too hard against his ribs. You want to know what's funny? For a second, I almost believed you. He did too. That was the part he hated. Somewhere beneath the machine, there was a woman who had once screamed for her daughter in a private hospital room and lost. But every decent feeling she might have had came wrapped in lawyers, money, threats, and delay. Some people didn't become monsters all at once. They became them decision by decision, while telling themselves it was survival. Lucy opened the bedroom door before he could say anything else. She stepped into the kitchen with one shoe on and one shoe still untied, backpack hanging from one shoulder, cheeks pale in that frighteningly adult way children look when innocence leaves the room before they do. How much did she offer? Lucy asked. Daniel's entire body dropped. Lucy, how much? Evelyn and Daniel looked at each other, and in that second, both of them understood the same terrible thing. The child had heard enough. Daniel pulled out a chair. Sweetheart, come here. No. Her eyes stayed on Evelyn. Is it true? No one answered fast enough. Lucy's chin trembled once, then set. Is she my mother? Daniel felt something shatter silently inside him. He had imagined this moment 100 ways. A careful afternoon, the right words, a park maybe, Marisol's bracelet in his palm. Not this. Not fluorescent kitchen light and a billionaire standing near the sink like a ghost in cashmere. He knelt in front of Lucy. You are my daughter. Nothing changes that. Do you hear me? Nothing. That's not what I asked. He closed his eyes for 1 second, maybe 2. When he opened them, he nodded. Lucy looked at Evelyn again, and whatever fantasy Evelyn might have secretly carried into that apartment died there. Because children do not care about magazine covers. They care about absences. Why didn't you come? Lucy asked. Evelyn's mouth parted, but no sound came out. Did you not want me? Daniel turned his head away, because the question was too naked to survive looking at directly. Evelyn took 1 step forward and stopped. I thought you were dead. And after that? The woman who could control boardrooms full of predators had no answer for a 10-year-old girl in untied shoes. Lucy's eyes filled, but her voice didn't. So now you do want me? No, Evelyn said quickly, then flinched at her own wording. I mean, I don't want to take you. I came because if people find out... Lucy looked at Daniel. She came because she's scared. There was no bitterness in the child's voice, just simple, devastating accuracy. Daniel stood slowly. He had spent so long deciding whether to protect Lucy from the truth that he had not prepared for Lucy cutting straight through it. Evelyn reached for the photograph on the table, but Lucy beat her to it. She picked it up, studied the younger face, then set it back down gently. You look sad, Lucy said. Evelyn blinked, blindsided. Lucy wiped her own eyes with the heel of her hand, furious at them for existing. My mom looked sad before she died, too. But she still stayed. That was the moment everything changed. Not because it was cruel. Because it was true. Evelyn lowered herself back into the chair, like her bones had forgotten how to hold her up. The room had become too small for all the things no one could unsay. Daniel looked at the $10 million paper again. 10 million could buy safety, schools, therapy, a backyard. It could buy Lucy every material thing he had failed to give her since Marisol died. It could even buy distance from the wolves circling Evelyn's world. But it would come with a lesson Lucy would never unlearn. That powerful people can arrive in your kitchen, tell you to vanish, and call it protection. Daniel picked up the offer letter, folded it once, and tore it in half. Then again, and again. The pieces fell onto the table like soft white confetti at a funeral. Evelyn watched without speaking. I'm not selling my daughter, Daniel said. And I'm not disappearing so your board can sleep. What are you going to do? She asked. He thought about revenge. God, he thought about it. Thought about dragging her through cameras and courtrooms and watching her perfect life split open in public. Thought about saying Marisol's name on national television until the whole empire shook. But then he looked at Lucy. She wasn't staring at Evelyn anymore. She was staring at him, waiting to learn what kind of man pain had made her father. Daniel exhaled slowly. I'm going to tell the truth. All of it. Not just the part that hurts you. The part that hurts me, too. Evelyn's voice dropped. If you do that, I lose everything. Daniel nodded. Maybe. Lucy reached for his hand. He held it tight. "Then maybe," he said, "you finally understand how the rest of us have been living." 3 days later, Daniel did not leak documents to gossip sites or sell interviews to the highest bidder. He took the flash drive, Marisol's letter, the financial trail, and the audio recording to a federal prosecutor who had spent 6 years trying to pry open corruption around Voss Biotech's board. Daniel made one demand before handing anything over. Lucy's identity would be protected. Marisol's name would be included. And if Evelyn Voss wanted any chance of being remembered as something other than a coward in a tailored suit, she could walk in on her own before they came for her. That night, on every screen in the country, Evelyn Voss stood alone at a press conference, without her lawyers speaking for her for the first time in her life. She admitted there had been a child. She admitted that records were falsified, that threats were made, that powerful men in her orbit had buried crimes beneath foundations and philanthropy and language polished clean of blood. She admitted she failed a woman named Marisol Reyes, who protected a little girl when wealth and fear tried to erase her. She did not ask for sympathy. She resigned before the questions finished. The board turned on her by sunrise. Arrests followed. Not enough to resurrect anyone. Not enough to make justice feel noble. But enough to crack the machine open so daylight could finally get in. Weeks later, Lucy and Daniel visited Marisol's grave with fresh lilies and the small silver bracelet polished clean. Wind moved softly through the cemetery grass. Lucy knelt first. "I found out a lot of things," she whispered to the stone. "But I know who my real mom is." Daniel broke then, a little. Not loudly. Just enough for tears to finally stop pretending they were stronger than love. When he looked up, he saw a black car parked far down the road beyond the gates. He couldn't make out the driver, but he knew. He didn't wave. Neither did the figure inside. Some distances could not be crossed because truth had finally arrived. Some people earned grief, but not access. That was part of the cost, too. Daniel placed his hand over Marisol's name, carved in stone. "You were right," he said softly. "She was chosen twice." Lucy slipped her hand into his, and as they walked back toward the gate, away from the grave and the waiting car and the life that almost bought them, Daniel understood something that no amount of money could ever teach. The world doesn't break people in one dramatic moment. It breaks them in negotiations, in compromises, in all the little times they're told silence is safer, easier, smarter. And sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do isn't winning. It's refusing to disappear. If you were in his place, with $10 million on the table and your child's future hanging in the balance, what would you have done?